In 2019, our family decided to turn our eyes from paddling the Salish seas and focused eastward toward the land of 1,000 lakes. So we packed 6 duffels full of camping gear, food, and clothes, loaded them onto a plane, flew into Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we packed ourselves into an SUV and drove 4 hours to Ely, Minnesota. This is our trip and thoughts from our first trip to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. There are several areas which you can enter the Boundary Waters. For our first time, we decided to go out of Ely, Minnesota. To say that Ely is a canoe town might be an understatement. First stop in town, Adventure Inn, where all your adventures begin. Next stop was to get our boats from Piragis Outfitters. These folks were amazing, and special shout out goes to Adam, who suffered through all our questions, help us get our permits and plan our trip.
Boundary Waters. The 1978 BWCA Act adds more acreage in specific natural direction.
The next morning we drove 30 minutes to entry point 30 on Lake 1. This would be our put in and take out. Our goal was to make it across Lake 1, do the 2 short portages into Lake 2 and find a campsite. Little did we know that we would end up paddling to Lake 3 before we found a free campsite. Start of our Boundary Waters trip. Coming from ocean paddling, portages were a new thing for us. A portage is the act of carrying one's boat and gear from one body of water to another. Portages in the Boundary Waters are measured in rods, which are around 16.5 feet. We tried to consolidate as much stuff as possible, but even so, everyone, including the kids, ended up making at least 2 trips. Our first 2 portages were only 27 and 38 rods in lake, which ended up being around half a mile of walking. Pretty good start for beginners. Portage etiquette was unclear. Some people seemed to wait in a first-come basis, while others just paddled up, threw their gear on their backs, and walked.
Hey guys!
Along the lakes we paddled, you were only allowed to camp in designated campsites. Not surprisingly, campsites closer to the put-in were full, and we ended up paddling all the way to Lake 3 before we found a campsite. It was lovely, in the back of a bay, fairly secluded from the foot traffic.
Is there sharks?
No shark.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raced our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl, daydreamer, kidnap me, take me back. All the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot. No mistake ever kept me late. spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace. Daydreamer, kitten and maid. Take me back.
When you mention camping in Minnesota, the most common response is, how are the bugs? To be honest, in mid-August, they weren't too bad. A few always buzzing in the morning and evenings, but none out in the water. When the sun went down, though, don't get caught out of your tent. So this day we decided we're going to do a big loop, paddle to the end of Lake 4, portage up the Cowiche River to Lake Hudson, paddle up the North Arm, portage over to Fire Lake, then portage back to Lake 4. Little did we know that we'd end up getting stuck at the end of Lake 4 due to 20-mile-an-hour winds. Paddling down Lake 4, we had the wind to our backs, but as we started to cut north, the wind ended up being too much and we had to go to a shore and wait it out. We carved out a little place amongst the trees to get out of the wind and waited. We ended up waiting for most of the day for the wind to die down. When it started to get into the late afternoon, we decided we needed to try something. So we packed all 4 adults and kids into the Winona, Minnesota, towed the second boat behind us, and set off. We were quite surprised at how stable and fast the boat was despite the wind. We cruised back to camp and were rewarded with a lovely evening. With a bit of sadness, we packed our things, loaded our boats, and paddled back to Lake 1. As it was a Friday, there was a lot more people. We checked every campsite, and we finally found the last 2 campsites on the westernmost arm. It was a great spot with a tiny beach and nice rock ledges to swim from. Great place for our last camp. On our last morning, I woke up before sunrise and headed out in the boat to fish. I didn't catch anything, which was par for the course on this trip, but the lake was so calm and the sunrise was so spectacular. It was worth it to eke out every last second on the lake. We did a little exploring before we finally had to turn north and paddle back to our entry point. As we paddled back to the entry point, we reflected on the trip. We knew we had only scratched the surface of the Boundary Waters. Our minds were churning with the possibilities of our next trip.